Dear Colleen Hoover, I hate your stinking guts. You make me vomit. You are the scum between my toes. Love, Holly. But really though, why do you make me feel the things you make me feel? How do you make me feel the things you make me feel? I just don't understand. So if you couldn't tell by the title of this video, this is a review and discussion video of Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and that beginning bit is from The Little Rascals, which is a great movie, because I got a pickle, I got a pickle, hey, 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 I got a pickle. I sing that song in my head or aloud every single time I eat a pickle, and I'm a pretty big fan of pickles, so it happens a lot. First I'll do a non-spoiler review, and then I will go into a spoilery discussion-y part with things. So first, really quick, a synopsis of this story. This is a story about Miles and Tate, and yes, it is hard to know which one's the boy and which one's the girl. So Miles is the boy and Tate is the girl. They meet, they're not friends, they're kind of casual acquaintances, sort of. Miles works with Tate's brother, but they decide that they are attracted to one another physically, so they're going to take advantage and have a casual sexual relationship. But Miles is like nothing else. He's like, there are two rules: you can't ask about my past and you can't expect a future. And Tate does her best to deal with these rules, but as their relationship grows, she struggles with her feelings for him and what she views his feelings for her to be. And they have to address these things and address particularly Miles' past and why he is the way he is. So in general, I would say that the plot to this is pretty standard. Like, this is a standard concept in chick lit or a romance novel. But because it's Colleen Hoover, she of course does more with it than you would expect. It's not a cliche. It doesn't flow out the way you think it would. She doesn't tell the story in a traditional way either, which is really interesting. So the story is told in alternating POV between Tate and Miles, but Tate's point of view is in the present day and Miles' POV is 6 years earlier. And so every single time you go between their POVs, you're kind of going between two different stories, and you're invested in these two different stories. And even though like Miles shows up in both sets of chapters, they feel very separate, but not. They're connected but separate. It's very odd. It's very much like Unbreakable by Tamara Weber, but it made it really interesting. Additionally, Miles' chapters are told in a different way, which adds another layer of just uniqueness and depth to the storytelling, making it more than just a traditional story. And the characters are amazing. I mean, I've said this before, Colleen Hoover knows how to make a character and how to connect you to them. I don't think I've ever read a character of hers, at least a main character, where I've been like, oh my god, can I please get out of their head? I really like both of them equally. I can't decide which one I like more, and I find them intriguing. And Cap, there's a guy in here named Cap. He's an 80-year-old man. Favorite. He's a favorite. Please. He's awesome. It's like the star of the show, really. I mean, he's like, the book is basically about him. I mean, clearly it's all about him. Right? And if you don't know, there is a song called Ugly Love by Griffin Peterson, who also did the Maybe Someday soundtrack, and it's beautiful. I love it. It's like my most listened to song now on my iTunes, and you should buy it. It's like $1.99. It really won't kill you, and it will break your heart, and it's great, and all books should come with songs like this. I think at this point Colleen Hoover is just going to have to keep having songs with her books because she's making it the standard. Just saying. So, basically I gave this book 5 stars. Yeah, but it's not my favorite, I will say that. Maybe someday, still my favorite, but I think in a lot of ways I just can connect to those characters just a little bit more than I can connect to these characters, but that's a me thing and not anything having to do with her writing. So that's why that one's just a little bit more. That's like 5.1 stars, and this is 5 stars. I would definitely recommend this. If you've read Colleen Hoover before, why haven't you picked it up yet? You should pick it up. If you have not read Colleen Hoover or New Adult before, you might want to go with a little caution. I think especially with Colleen Hoover, she tends to be a little light on the sexual content, but this one, not light. So just know that going in. But it's great and it's beautiful and it doesn't feel over the top and it is perfect. Like, it's not gratuitous or unnecessary. It enhances the characters. And that kitchen table scene, yo. Beautiful, heartbreaking. Ugh. So that's all I have to say for my, like, non-spoilery review section. I feel like I don't even know. Just read it. But now I'm going to do a little discussion video. So if you haven't read it and don't want to be spoiled, please go away. Because I don't want to spoil it. I think I wasn't gonna talk about this initially. I like mapped out what I wanted to talk about last night after I read it, and then I went to bed, and when I was going to sleep I was struggling to sleep, and I've had that happen to me from books before. The Hunger Games did that to me, and like Maybe Someday and Easy did that to me as well, but I didn't feel like I was going to have that issue last night. I finished the book. I was emotional, it affected me, but I was just like, no, I'm okay. I'm not feeling a book hangover coming, I'm fine. And then I laid down and I couldn't stop thinking about Clayton and that scene in the water. It made me sad when I read it, like initially, like when I was reading the book, but it didn't affect me in any particular way, like more than, just, you're sad, a baby died, parents lost their child. I was more affected when I was reading by Rachel's reaction and Miles's reaction to Rachel's reaction and all of that than the actual death of this child. And then I was going to sleep and I could not stop thinking about it. Like, I struggled, and it made me feel like earlier this year, my grandfather passed away, and I would be fine during the day, and then I would go to bed and I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about him, and I'd be bawling my eyes out. I'm gonna oh my gosh, I'm really crying right now. And that's how it felt like to me. It was like all of a sudden I had sat with this book long enough and I felt like he was real, and I was devastated by his death, and I'm just a person reading this book, and I can't imagine what that would be like. And it makes me wonder if it's easier if it happens early, or if there is an easier. And to be able to write that as a mother for Colleen Hoover, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine putting myself in the mindset of how you would feel if you lost a child. Knowing that you have a child is devastating, and it just, the fact that part kicked in later is just shows how good of a writer she is and how much she can make a connection to you. And I felt like I had to talk about that. Now I feel like I've talked about it enough, so let's move on. Okay. I really enjoyed the Miles chapters. I mean, I liked Tate's chapters. I liked her a lot. I really enjoyed her voice. I thought she was really enjoyable to be in her head, and I don't have a lot in common with her, but I understood her thought process a lot. But Miles I connected to more emotionally. It was interesting. It really was like I was reading two different stories. When I would read his POV, I'd get like anxious and like those giddy feelings, and part of it I think was I knew something was going to happen and I didn't know. So initially I figured Rachel had died, and then she got pregnant, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe they both die. Maybe they she dies in delivery. Maybe he does still have a son out there somewhere. And I just couldn't figure it out. I never for the life of me even thought that they would have lost the baby, but she was still around. And that's devastating. I think in a lot of ways authors make stories like the Rachel and Miles story and then kill the Rachel character off. But in a lot of ways that makes it easier for the Miles character to move on, because there isn't anything physically here holding you back from having another relationship. But the fact that she's still alive and could be devastated by something he blames himself for made it that much more emotional. There was actually a point in this book, and I felt this way in Maybe Someday too, where I wasn't sure this was going to end happily. And I mean, in my head I know it is, because that's part of the promise of this type of novel, and Colleen Hoover has always ended happily, so I fully intend her to continue to do so. But she writes these stories that are so intense that I just start to think there's no way out of this. There's no way these characters can emotionally grow enough and deal with their problems enough to come together. And then they do! They do! When he went to go see Miles, Miles went to go see Rachel, and we got to read from Rachel's point of view and got to spend time with her, even just for a chapter. It was great, and I don't think a lot of authors would do something like that. Wasn't there a Maggie chapter in Maybe Someday? I'm pretty sure there was. Am I making that up? I think there was, and it kind of reminded me of something like that. I'm so glad we got to see her, and it's almost like she okays this relationship, so that means she okays, like, we can feel okay with it, and we can feel okay with his moving on. Stop talking about Miles, you guys, except the end, that like epilogue. Please. Please. Something about Tate and this book that I really, really liked was the way that Colleen Hoover handled Tate's sexuality. So never in this book is she like timid about it. She's never like, oh no, I'm a girl, I don't do these things. No, she's like, no, like, let's go. And she knows that she's gonna get emotionally invested, but she's willing to risk it. And she's never like the timid virgin girl. She's like, no, we're gonna have sex, and I'm gonna like it, and you're gonna like it, and let's go. And yeah, she struggles with some things like the like kitchen table scene, like I talked about earlier, which is probably one of the sexiest things I've ever read, and then ended in such a devastatingly heartbreaking way, which, side note, makes sense. So as a human being, when you are in a heightened state of emotion, whatever that emotion is, it's easy to transmit that to another emotion. So if you're super angry, it's easy to switch to like super happy, like you don't dip, it'll just transition. And so in a way, I think that's what she did as a writer. So you get super involved in this like sexual thing, and then it gets destroyed, and so you're already at this point of heightened emotion in a happy way, and then you get heartbroken, and so you feel that heartbreak even more, so you connect to Tate even more. It was like my favorite scene in the whole book. But I love Tate, like that she's not afraid to make Tate a woman who's confident and knows what she's doing, and isn't embarrassed for the relationship that she has. Like when Corbin finds out, she's just like, no, I'm an adult, I can do what I want, I understand that you're upset about it, but I'm going to continue to do what I want. And she just is like, goes back to Miles and is like, well, let's go, and doesn't change her relationship because her brother knows. Like, I just, thank you. Like, I would love to have more of that in fiction. And I'm not talking about like being like crazy promiscuous or anything like that. Like, I do think there's a line, but she wrote it well. I really liked the way Miles' story, like his POV was written most of the time, where it was told in like verse, and in a lot of ways it felt like slam poetry. And I feel like this book in a lot of ways shows you where Colleen Hoover's come from. So you see that aspect of slammed. You see the dual POV of maybe someday. You see her growing as an author, which she was already amazing to begin with, but she continues to get better and stronger. And I really liked those chapters, and it's great. And it was interesting when he would switch into verse and when he would come out and it would just be prose. Like, it wasn't prose a lot, but it would be. And it was almost like when he was, I don't even know, it's so interesting. Like, the prose or the verse is almost like when he's not afraid to feel emotion, even though he's still in verse when Clayton dies and he's dealing with those issues. He's still emotional, and then once he cuts himself off, he switches, and in the present he switches back to prose. But then once he's willing to be open with Tate, you know, in the end, in the epilogue and stuff, it switches back to verse in a lot of ways. I mean, that doesn't like fully play out, I guess, but in some way, I'm just trying to like in my head understand why sometimes there's prose. So if you have any ideas, let me know, because I'm still trying to figure this out. But yes, I loved this book. If there's anything that you want to talk about, try to keep spoilers out of the comments, but if you want to talk about it, let me know. I really enjoyed it. She didn't disappoint. I was starting to get worried when I picked it up. I was like, oh my god, what if I don't like it? What if it's a disappointment? But of course it wasn't. So we're okay. Also, if you know when Colleen Hoover is writing another book, let me know. I know she's working on something, but I also know she's going on tour, and I feel like that's kind of a struggle. She's actually coming to my area. I live in the Rochester, New York area. She's coming here in September. It's the tour with her, Abby Glines, and Jamie McGuire, but their tour stop here is at noon, I believe, and it's on a weekday, so I'm at work, and technically the first 2 weeks of September, which is when they'll be here, we can't take off, so I have to use personal time, which is allowed. Like, it's not like I'd be penalized, but I'm not sure if I want to go, but I'd have to miss a whole day of work for it, and I just can't decide. Plus, I'm also like really like anxious. I'm an anxious person, and going to something like that, I feel like I would just be really quiet and timid and not get what I'm supposed to out of it. And nobody I know really like reads or anything, so it's not like I have anyone to go with to like support me. I don't know. So I feel like I might go, I might not. I'm pretty sure it's on a ticketed event, so I can just decide like the day before or whatever. I don't know. I can't decide. It's so hard. I want to meet her, but I feel like I would just not be as good as I should at something like that. I don't know. I kind of wish it was in the evening. If it was at like 7, I'd still have to take a couple hours off of work, but it wouldn't be a whole day. And it's just a whole day of work. I mean, it is a lot. It's 8 hours, and yes, I'd get paid for it, but it'd be using 8 hours I can't use somewhere else. I don't know, but I'm not sure. Like, I feel like authors, at least YA authors, they don't come to my area very often, so I feel like I should take advantage. Yeah. So if you have any thoughts, let me know on that too, because I can't decide. But yes, so thank you for watching. Bye!